The rumors are swirling, and a Leafs-Stolarz extension could be in the works. We'll discuss that and more on today's edition of the Locked On at Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, the daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here. Visit the FanDuel app today to start planning your futures bets now. What's happening, David, Cowboys fan Morassutti? How you feeling on this wonderful Friday?
Well, I mean, they lost, so But I mean, at least I'm not looking at a fraud right now.
Okay, so we got to address this.
Let's get right.
Well, okay, you explain, because I don't even know what the hell's going on. I show up on Overdrive today to go ahead and make my pick for the game, as we do. You know, the Overdrive picks are back. Team Hayes and Bro at it once again. And I get ambushed. Apparently, Luke Wilson caught up with you, apparently, and you're calling my boy Hayes to be a fraud. And then somehow that gets back to Luke, over to Hayes, and then he's accusing me of not sticking up for myself. I did not know this happened. I had no idea this went down. You do explain yourself, Mr. Morassutti.
First off, this happened. Okay, so what happened was about a month and a half ago. It's at an Argo game. Luke is doing CFL this year. You know, it's Friday nights. He was at the Friday night game. Said, "Hey, you know, how you doing?" He's like, "Recognize." He's like, "Yeah, I do a podcast with Mike, Al's brother." He's like, "Do you really now?" He's like, "Do you mind if we do a quick video?"
That's
okay.
Son of a B.
So did a video. He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna save this for the." I think he said he was gonna save it for the group chat. I did tell you that I did see him that day. I did send you a message that I met up with your boy Luke at the Argo game.
You did. I was unfamiliar with you calling my partsy a fraud, though.
I couldn't tell you what the video was about because that was supposed to be secret.
Yeah.
What I didn't know was my name being dropped on Overdrive.
Yeah.
That I did not expect. And I got as soon as it happened, I think I got 5 messages within a 2-minute span saying, Luke Wilson just dropped your name on Overdrive. I'm like, he did what now?
What happened? Yeah.
And I get the clip sent to me because I actually got the clip sent to me 3 times.
Yeah.
And then I saw your follow-up on it. I'm like, yeah, I did not give you an opportunity to defend your boy.
No, it's my partsy. We will no longer be slandering my partsy in the presence of Luke Wilson. That comes to a halt.
Wrong pick in the opening game, but that's just no.
We're not going to talk about that, Dave. We're not going to talk about that. In fact, we got to put an end to the football talk. We got to get into some Leafs conversation here. We're not too far away from the start of the season, bud. Training camps, it's about to be go time in the next couple weeks here for training camp, and it sounds like there could be some news afoot. I don't know if you got the same vibe, but there was a report out there. Well, not really a report, but Brad Treliving caught up with Pierre LeBrun, or vice versa, however you want to look at it. And LeBrun wrote about the sit down, the one-on-one they had. And I don't know if you read into these comments the way I did, and I'll share them in just a moment. But to me, it seems like the Leafs and Stolars are heading towards some sort of resolution on an extension, and I think it could come soon. You tell me if you believe these comments lead you to believe that as well. Quote, "We've certainly explored some things with Anthony and his representative, and we'd love to find a way to get something done. If there's something that both sides are comfortable with, we'll look at it. And we've been in those discussions for some time right now. We'll see what the coming days bring." That makes it feel like we could see something in and around the start of camp, does it not?
Well, we know this Leafs team, when there's a player that they want to get signed, they're going to do what they can to try to get that deal done. So, you look at Jake McCabe, they don't want that one to linger. eventually, the Nylander extension got done. The Matthews, like they have found ways to, if they see a player that they want to lock up, they will do what they can. It was that last part there when he says, "We'll see what the coming days bring."
Right.
That's where initially I'm just like, they've been at it for some time. If there's something comfortable, that's where I was like, I don't know. And then you see that last part, and it's like, okay, like we might see them before camp opens, and I'm not surprised. Like, I am not surprised.
So what does that look like then, you think, when it comes to Anthony Stolarz? Because it is interesting. He's not making a whole lot of money, this year. He signed the Leafs got him at a pretty good ticket on a 2-year deal when he signed a free agency, making just $2.5 million. He's clearly going to be due for a raise, but like, what does that look like? Because it could look different based on what their expectation is. Is the expectation that Stolars is the guy moving forward and he's the 1A in this tandem? Or do they view him as the future 1B and still have that belief that Joseph Woll eventually becomes the main starter, the guy who starts, the bulk of the load and probably is your go-to guy come game one of the playoffs? Doesn't that have to factor into this conversation when you're talking about a multi-year extension with Stolars?
Well, I think that's part of it, right? It's not always just about the dollar amount too. It's about what the dollar amount shows, what it means for him, right? Is he the true number one, or is he the tandem? I'm still in the belief that it's a tandem.
Oh, it's a tandem, but I still think that it's not even
there's got to be a clear 1A.
1B. Like, that's, to me, is the difference. Yeah. There's a difference there's going to be a monetary difference in how they believe he can be in the future. He was the 1A for a good majority of the season. He ended up starting in the playoffs, obviously, but he didn't end up playing more games than Joseph Woll. Like, he ended up playing 34 games this year, right? That's less than half the games. And that was very good, right? A 214 goals against, a 926 save percentage. When you look at how that stacks up against, some of the best goalies around the league, like, was third in goals against average this season behind only Kemper and Hellebuck. And he led the NHL in save percentage among qualified goaltenders with a 926 ahead of Hellebuck's 925. So very good numbers, extremely good numbers for Anthony Stolarz when he got to play. But it's a small sample size. And that's where I think it's going to be very interesting to see how things kind of come into place here, because there isn't that big body of work as him being a starter. Like, 34 games this year was the most he had played in a professional season since pre-COVID. And it's the most that he ever played at the NHL level. He had a career high 28 games with the Ducks a few years ago, but 34 games is a career high. And if he's going to be paid, more than the 2.5 that he got, or more than the $3 million that Joseph Woll is making, which I think he's probably going to be asking for significantly more, he's got to play more than 34 games. Does he not? Like, he's got to be in the net for half the starts if he's going to be asking for something that starts with an F, whether it's a $4 or $5 million deal.
Yeah, he's got to prove that he could play at least another 15 more games minimum in order to even get into that conversation. Because, like, the one thing that Stolars has is that the goaltending market stinks, especially in free agency. Yeah, you can Philip Gustafson's, a half decent option. Like, Sergei Bobrovsky, he's gonna be too old, in my opinion. Like, when he reaches free agency,
sign him to like a 7-year deal at like $2 million per season for Bobrovsky, and have him there till he's like 43, just like Marchand.
And then you got Jacob Markstrom. Like, the options just are not plentiful. And so, like, if you're Stolars, you can say, well, okay, if you're not going to pay me, then I'm just going to go to the open market where teams have shown that they're willing to spend money, especially on goalies, and he can do that. But I also think that if you're Stolars, you just had your best year of your career in Toronto. Goalies tend to like the situation they're in and try to maintain that level of comfort. And I find the Leafs, this is probably why they're trying to get this deal done now.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, I know some people are like, oh, it's 1 year. Can he replicate it? I would rather bet on my chances on Anthony Stolarz and what he can do versus what's out there. And if you have to pay in the $4 million range to get it done, you could do a lot worse with that money. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's like that number is not a bad one to look at. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back. We'll look at some comparables from some other tandem goalies around the league that Stolars could be pointing to in terms of what he wants on his next contract and maybe what we think is a fair deal for both him and the Maple Leafs. And could another goaltender be in the mix for the Maple Leafs this upcoming year? We'll talk about that next. Here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, we get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however I like to bet, whether I'm betting on player props, building a same-game parlay, jumping in on some live same-game action. It keeps the game exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick. It's easy and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So you're ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you, as we are each and every day. Starting Monday, we're back to 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, each and every day, bringing you nothing but hot Maple Leafs content. So if you're a big Leaf fan and you want to be up to date with what's going on with the team, make sure you're locked into the Locked On Leafs podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. It's free and available there, and also on YouTube if you want to come and look at our mugs from time to time. So we're just talking about a potential extension that could be in the works for Anthony Stolarz and the Maple Leafs coming off his really solid year one. He goes into a second year, and you had mentioned before it may be better for the Maple Leafs to get an extension done before the season and bet on Anthony Stolarz. I've heard that before. Do you want to know which player I've heard that with before, which scares me?
Yeah, sure.
Jack Campbell.
That was exactly gonna be my.
How many times after the first year he was with Toronto, and even the first 2 months of the season when he was with the Maple Leafs, did we come on here and say, man, they should sign Campbell. Campbell deserves an extension. He was an all-star that final year he was there. And then it all fell apart for him. And it's because it was a small sample size. When the sample size grew, it all fell apart. Once one thing happened and the next and the next, and before you knew it, it was not a good scene in Toronto. So and then he walks via free agency. Somehow Edmonton decides to give him a boatload of cash, and now he's a free agent after being bought out and sat in the minors for a couple of seasons. So that's the one thing that I think you do worry is sample size with Stolars. Now, he has been, in the NHL for quite some time. Like when you do look at his body of work, he has had 142 starts in the National Hockey League. He's been a backup, for the last four years full time, I guess you could say, at the NHL level, including last year. So maybe he's broken through and you like, what you've seen a little bit more, especially what you saw from him in the playoffs last season. But that is one name that does kind of sit, sometimes, sits rent free in the back of my head when I'm thinking about paying goaltenders who do not have, a large body of work under them.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the goaltending market, especially, Jack Campbell's a fascinating one just because I remember how could the Leafs let Campbell go after he had such a decent year and he looked like he was finally putting it all together, and then you see the contract that the Oilers gave him and you're just like, yeah, no, I don't know. That's fine. You're good to let him go. And it was justified. You have to in some way kind of look at what Stolars did and say, okay, you're the amount of games, that's the worrisome part, but the production was there. And everyone talks about the playoffs and how different it might have been if he didn't get hurt. But I just think that the alternative is what worries me more. If you don't keep Stolars, like Joseph Wall, you're comfortable, at least you have him, but he's got his own injury history. You haven't really developed somebody behind those two to say, okay, no, you can let Stolars go and bring up a Dennis Hildeby. Like, we're not at that stage yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying not to bring back Stolars or that I'm worried about it. It's just, if you can wait sometimes, you wait one more year and see if something else, or wait and see if it works out well, because it could go the other way at some point too. But when you look at a contract for Anthony Stolars, like, what does that look like for you? What do you think is a fair market deal for both sides at this point?
I'm not. I look at Stolars and I'm saying, like, at 31 years old, maybe I'm okay with a max like 3-4 years. If you're gonna, like, if he's pushing for term, but something tells me like they're gonna try to keep this like a short term deal, like maybe 2-3 years. And I'm saying in about the $4 million range. Like, I'm comfortable with 4. When you get to the 4.5, 5, like, to me, that's like, it's tough to get that type of money right now for goaltenders. Like, you have to prove that you're durable enough to play a good chunk of games, and you've got to have some, like, the production. He's got one of the two for sure. He's got the production, just does not have that ability to say, I could play 50 games in a season for you.
Yeah, he hasn't done it yet, at least, and that is kind of the concern when it comes to paying him that boatload of money. I'm taking a look just now to see what maybe some comparables could possibly be, and I mean Jonas Corposalo, I guess he's a $4 million goaltender, but I just feel like Stolars it just has played significantly better than Corposalo. So do you so he's got to be worth more than that. Like Kevin Lankinen got 4.5 million as a backup slash 1B goaltender. So maybe that's something you're looking at potentially, or a Vemelka at 4.75. Joey Decord got paid $5 million on a long term deal. He's a little younger, but could Joey Decord be that type of guy? I think between 4.5 and 5 is probably the sweet spot there of what you're going to be looking for someone who is going to come in, who's going to compete, and maybe turns out to be your 1A, but you could also be comfortable with him being your 1B at that price. If it's anything north of 5, it would be tough to stomach him sitting on the bench for 45 plus games a year if that's how it kind of plays out. So I think between 4 and 5 million probably is right about where you got to be when you're putting together a tandem goaltending.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? And again, I think Stolars has done, he finally feels like he's in a place where he should feel comfortable about his role and, getting that next contract. It's just, he has to also understand that goalies, especially in the NHL, your best ability is your availability, right? We talked how much about Joseph Woll, and what's the one thing holding him back is his ability to be durable.
Yeah.
Stolars has to prove the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So maybe a little bit more of a runway could allow them to, I don't know, see that. But it sounds as though something could be in the works and could be coming down the pike here in the next week or so as we lead up to training camp. Again, something that we'll monitor pretty closely as we approach training camp. Does a third goalie need to be brought in, or is the Hildebeest enough for the Maple Leafs? We'll have that conversation next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. The Maple Leafs pretty set with their top two goaltenders, one of the best tandems in the NHL, I would say, in Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. But it kind of drops off after that, especially when it comes to experience. You know, in the last couple of years, they've had a third goalie who's had a significant amount of NHL experience. So when an injury occurred, they did have someone who could pop up, right? Matt Murray was there for them. They've gone the Dave Riddick route, Curtis McElhinney route, and if you're going back a ways. Right now, you look at the goaltending and the depth chart after Stolars and Woll, it drops off pretty quick. And you get to Dennis Hildeby, the only other goaltender who does have NHL experience in the organization. That's only 6 games where he had an 878 save percentage last year. Outside of that, no other goaltender in the organization with NHL experience. Is that a concern for you, Dave, and something the Leafs may try to or should try to address prior to training camp?
I think it is to a certain degree because you saw that you needed a third goalie last year.
4. They started 4 goaltenders.
Sorry, 4.
Matt Murray had a couple starts as well.
Well, yeah. You had Murray, you had Hildeby, you had Stolars, and obviously Woll. Like in today's NHL, if you're not ready for your third and fourth guy to start, then you're not prepared. Like you're just not prepared for what's just the goaltending position takes a lot, right? And so I think Hildeby, I'm comfortable if they end up saying like he's our third guy. I'm fine with that, just because you're just not finding a whole lot of decent value out there. Like even Matt Murray, like sure he only played twice, went 1-1 in that stretch. I think one game was that against Washington that he played the one game against?
Possibly, yeah. I can't recall what the games were. I just remember him playing.
Yeah, sorry. One was against one was against Washington. They lost 5-2. I remember he wasn't very good in that one.
Mhm.
Then he beat Buffalo. Like those were the 2 games he played, and it was not the fact that he got another NHL deal after that was good for him. He's got a good agent. Yeah. But like again, that's the bar for teams with third goalies. You're just not gonna find a third goal in the NHL right now that's gonna be like, a rock in the net. It's just not happening. But you're looking for somebody that, if you're down 2 goalies, you're going to have somebody that can step in and play NHL games for you. Like,
yeah, in a pinch, right? A guy in a pinch who can come up and who can play some games for you. And they've got experience. They've been there before. And then it doesn't, you're not throwing Hildeby out to the Wolves too early. Like maybe he wasn't quite ready for the NHL last year and having to play those 6 games. He did struggle when he got back down to the American League after the call-up. Did that have something to do with it? Was his confidence shaken? Perhaps. So do you want to ruin that development? It's a worthwhile conversation to have. So maybe you bring in a veteran, who could be his number 2 down in the minors. But when they need a call-up, that guy is the one who gets brought up. So I do have a list of 5 potential goaltenders that the Maple Leafs could look at to bring in as a veteran third goalie. Maybe they go the PTO route potentially to do this. We do know the Leafs love a good PTO, and they have not yet signed one this year. So maybe it's a goalie that comes in on a PTO. So I'll give you a 5-pack of names, Davey. You let me know, which of these names, if any, intrigue you. So the 5 guys who are still currently available via free agency: Alexander Georgiev, who was an absolute dumpster fire last year. No ifs, ands, buts about it for Colorado, and then he got to San Jose, and he was no good there either. But he is available, and he has played at a high level before, and you're just looking for him to be a third goalie at best anyway. Jack Campbell. Speaking of Jack Campbell, he is available, and he is a free agent. Could Jack Campbell potentially be someone that the Maple Leafs entertain to bring back into the fold, back into the organization, to be a potential third goalie. Spencer Martin is another guy who does have a lot of experience. He was in the NHL a couple of years ago, played a lot of games for the Vancouver Canucks, and then last year, I think, or the year before, was with the Carolina Hurricanes. He was being a backup there while Fred Anderson was injured, so he's got some NHL experience. Louis Domingue, yes, Louis Domingue. What was his? What did he say? What was the quote by Louis Domingue that made him so famous?
He played in that playoff game where he came in.
Yeah.
And they asked him like, what was the meal between the overtimes? And he said spicy pork and broccoli. And they asked him how was it, and they're just like, not the best. And like, what made it funny is Louis Domingue is French, right? He's got the Quebecois accent to him, so he's like, not the best.
Yeah, not the best. Right, that's what it was. Not the best. So he's not the best goaltender, but someone who, again, lots of experience. Could he's been in the American Hockey League for a while, so I don't think he'd be upset about taking on an AHL role, a guiding role, if you will. But does have experience playing in the NHL. Has experience playing NHL playoff games at that. As we just referenced, not the best, but does have experience. But here's one for you. What about a reunion with old Jimmy Reimer? James Reimer still available. I think he's like 35, 36 years old at this point.
37.
37-year-old James Reimer. Do you bring him back into the fold to potentially be this team's veteran third goalie? I know that there's a lot of segment of this fan base. Steve Dangle, I'm sure, would definitely approve of that one, bringing Reimer back into the fold. So that's the 5-pack of current free agent goaltenders that I took a peek at and thought might make some sense for the Leafs as a PTO or as a third goaltender. Any of those ones kind of stick out to you, and anyone you think would make sense?
Well, I mean, the vibes would tell me Reimer, just because I met the guy, got his signed hat. He had a sick logo on a hat, but he wouldn't be my top choice. It would probably be Georgiev, because this is like, I know he had a really bad year. He saw himself get shipped away from Colorado, but the Colorado wasn't great.
Dave,
but
he went to San Jose. He was even worse. He had an 874 save percentage and 338.
Who's doing well in San Jose? Like, let's be honest.
But like, he was brutal for Colorado too. Like, he's just terrible. Like, he legitimately could not enter a game without giving up 5 goals, it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, but San Jose is just so bad. Like, it's hard to always like blame it all on the goalie. Now, we're talking about the third goalie here. It's just like Reimer at least played some games last year, and it was for Buffalo, and Buffalo was not very good.
I believe he had like half decent numbers, though, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
he had a 901 save percentage, 290 goals against. Like,
in Buffalo. I mean, you think San Jose?
If James Reimer is willing to come back to Toronto, and they sign him tomorrow, like to a PTO, I'd be fine with it. I just thought Georgiev has a little more experience, but I mean,
what?
He did a couple years ago. Well, the year before, had half decent numbers for Colorado.
James Reimer's played 525 games regular season, 11 playoff games. I mean, Reimer's got far more experience than Georgiev.
I'm just talking more like recent experience, but like, again, like, maybe it's just, I'm just kind of overthinking the Detroit part of it and the San Jose part of it, which, like, if I'm going to give Georgiev a little bit of a break, I should give Reimer the same break. Yeah, sign me up for James. I'll take the James Reimer experience 2.0. I was upset the way that the first experience went, because I thought he got the raw end of the deal.
Well, yeah, he got traded to San Jose, right? I mean, the team was junk. Like,
well, yeah, the team was terrible. Like, in that Leafs, he got traded from the Leafs because he was actually half decent, and he needed him to not be good.
You're stopping too many pucks here, James. We're trying to
918 save percentage to 249 goals against average for a team that was actively trying to tank Ross and Matthews. Now, granted, it was probably the right decision to trade him because they got Austin Matthews in that. But yeah, I'm like looking at the numbers. I didn't realize. Okay, well, San Jose was still good. Even when like San Jose was bad a few years ago, his numbers were actually like league average. So
Yeah, I think he's been decent. He's been a nice little backup goalie for a while, and if he just wants to keep playing, whether or
yeah,
not he can play in the American League is a whole different story. But if he just wants to keep playing, I mean, I think there's a lot of fans of his in this city, in this organization, that probably would give him an opportunity. I think that he'd be a good locker room guy, someone you bring in, and certainly you trust him. If an injury occurred, he could go up and play some meaningful minutes for you. So that's one other guy who I was considering as well. Certainly, probably.
yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Jack Campbell wasn't on your list though.
No, I just think for Jack's sake, he, just how everything went with Edmonton, I just think that we always knew that he had the talent. I don't think it's ever been a question about anything other than can he mentally handle it. Now we're talking about, again, the third goalie role and Myers. That's just, in my opinion, that's just too much of a risk to throw it toward, like, to put your chips in that basket. Like, I'd rather have Reimer. I'd rather have even like a Dustin Tokarski I would probably have over Jack Campbell. Again, Soupy. Like, he had great moments in Toronto. I never forget the win streak that he had. I think the record he set for most consecutive wins by a Leafs goalie. Those always remember that. It's just, again, if we're gonna throw names out there, Reimer probably is the best one. So let's go and get James signed. Even though I don't know if they'll even do the PTO. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know either. But those are just a couple of names who are out there. Although Spencer Martin, I just went to take a peek. I think he signed a deal in the KHL, so he's actually not even available. He's already out in Russia, so you can cross him off the list. We'll put Dustin Tokarski in there instead of Spencer Martin to round out a little 5-pack. Really quickly, Dave, there was also some news and notes around the NHL. Pierre LeBrun reporting that starting when the CBA starts next year in 26-27, so that started that season, they're going to be shortening preseason games, and that's they're going to be implementing the 84-game regular season. And get this, they're going to begin the season in late September, and the Stanley Cup shall be awarded by mid-June. Wow. They actually listened to the fans for once.
Yeah, but guess what? They're not going to listen to the fans on using that extra time to make sure the draft is centralized.
Yeah, still going with the decentralized draft, huh?
Yep.
God, I mean, I just think that realistically, the biggest issue wasn't necessarily the draft that was decentralized. The broadcast was brutal.
Yeah, just the way that the whole thing was run.
Yeah, and I think that they'll learn from that. If it's just as bad and it turns out to be, another 4-hour 4A for the first round, and they can't possibly do this every year like that. No shot, no chance. So they'll give it one more shot, I guess, and see if they can change it and see if it works out any better. But I prefer the in-person. That's just me. I know a lot of people feel the same way. The centralized draft was always better, in my opinion. More moves happened too. Like, we didn't see any trades this year. I think that was a big reason for it. Many GMs said that they felt that was a reason why there wasn't a whole lot of movement on the draft floor, because, well, there wasn't a draft floor. You couldn't go over to a GM and have a quick conversation and try and get something done. So yeah, they're never going to bat 1,000, Dave. They're never going to bat 1,000. But having the Stanley Cup awarded by mid-June, it's a good start, because no one want to see Stanley Cup final hockey on June 24th again. I just don't need to see it. All right, June 12th, June 11th, 13th, get out of here. Then we're done, and then we can look forward to free agency. Give them a couple of weeks, get ready for the draft, get ready for free agency, and Bob's your uncle. Away we go. So that all starts not this season, but the start of next season, the 2026-27 year is when that all will be implemented. All right, it's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. We're back to 5 shows a week starting next week. So Monday through Friday. So join us again. Enjoy your weekends. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.